Thank you, Nancy. Let's stay with that conversation. Let's now bring in the Deputy Secretary General of Kenya Red Cross, Dr. James Kisia. Thanks for making time for us tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Let's start with that big question of ours. Is there enough food within our borders to cater for these problems?
Well, unfortunately for us as a country, we produce less of everything that we consume. And in terms of food security, it is an issue for the whole country as a whole, but it is even a bigger issue in some pockets of the country, areas that are above a certain latitude, the arid and the semi-arid areas, where not only are they not producing enough food, but even more importantly, they cannot afford to buy the food, even if it were available. The levels of vulnerabilities are quite high in these areas.
Now, there have been so many questions raised by different Kenyans from across the Republic concerning the latest happenings in Turkana and other parts of the country. Now, just before we go into that, just give us an update from the point of view of Kenya Red Cross, what's happening in Turkana as we speak.
Well, I think in Turkana we have reached alert states. I mean, there are these triggers that are used in disaster management. Early on, we reached a threshold where we should have triggered some surge capacity or diverted some resources to start attending to the issues of drought in Turkana. With the absence of rains in December, we have now reached alert situations, because what happens is that the degree of the disaster, the magnitude of the disaster, and how people feel the disaster is really a function of their own vulnerability. If today you don't have food for a week, you have relatives, you go to the bank, but these people's levels of vulnerability are at such a low threshold that anytime there is a slight change, and that change is the trigger that we say at the Red Cross should change our behavior towards the drought.
Now, let's go back behind a couple of years, about 2.5 years ago. There was the drought in 2011,
yes.
Between mid-2011 and mid-2012, described as one of the worst in 60 years. And Kenyans came together in that Kenyans for Kenya initiative, raising more than 600 million Kenya shillings. And the Kenya Red Cross, through that initiative, identified some parts of Turkana to be able to benefit from that early initiative, that early response initiative. Kenyans have been asking, what happened to these projects? Do you have viable long-term projects to make sure there is food security in Turkana? And if they are there, how successful have they been?
Yeah, I think we have to frame your question around the magnitude of the problem vis-a-vis the money that was available. 700 million Kenya shillings. The immediate 350 was used for food relief, immediate life savings, interventions, and that's what you saw the lorries being flagged in 2011. Then you have the 350 million for the long term. In areas where we have intervened with irrigation and even using solar to fuel, to pump the water, in those areas you're not hearing any drought. But unfortunately, the areas of Turkana in Kaikor, the areas of Walda in Moyale, in Wajir, in Mwingi, and many of these other areas, we have 24 of these projects that are ongoing. In those areas, you don't have this food situation. Turkana itself is more than 71,000 kilometers square. The Coast Province is 79,000. It's just slightly smaller than Coast Province. So it's a huge area, difficult infrastructure, and it's a developmental issue that we must address through development. But in the short term, to save lives, we must continue to have these projects. We must continue to give relief food.
Very quickly, in 30 seconds, what is a long-term solution for all this? Very quickly.
The long-term solution is to produce food, enough food, and to produce the food at the level where the people are. In that case, it means that we have to look at the resources in Turkana to create large-scale irrigations for the production of that food.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for talking to us tonight. That's Dr. James Kisia.